Great. Welcome everyone and hello to another Younium webinar. This time we are going into the topic how to stay compliant while your company is growing. And we are really happy to have you all with us today and also that we will learn something new, especially in this area that is important element to bring to build the trust between you and your customers, but also to have a steady growth path when it comes to future investments. We will look at some of the key compliance elements in the SaaS business, and also how a solution like subscription management can help you and enable you to stay compliant while you are growing. And let's introduce also the team who is behind today's webinar. So we have Ernic as our main presenter and also account executive and a subscription expert who will take a lead in today's webinar, and I'm super looking forward to hear more from him. This is also his first webinar and a really a topic where he is one of the best Younium experts when it comes to the compliance and when it comes to this related topics. Along with Ernic in Amsterdam office, we also have our Milja, and I'm really happy to hear and to see what Milja has prepared for us for today, because we will see the example and some of the insights what we at Younium have when we merge these two topics. So maybe Ernic and Milja, you can say hi. I know that you're sitting close to each other in Amsterdam there.
Hey everyone, nice to meet you.
Hi everyone, good morning. Nice to meet you.
Thank you guys and ladies. And we have also Linda with us. Linda is our host of the chat, I think we can call it like that. Why is this important for us? Because we have a lot of content that we would like to share with you all, content that you can learn from, that you can use in the future, and Linda will share this content with all of you in the chat box. But not only sharing the content, she will also manage the questions if you have, and we will really like you to be more engaged and ask or give a comment or anything. We would like to see this webinar as engaging as possible. So Linda, maybe you can also say hi to all of our attendees today.
Of course. Hi, everyone. Glad to have you.
And my name is Hrvoje, and I will be your host for today. Okay, before we deep dive into today's webinar, let us just go over a couple of housekeeping points. The total time of the webinar is 50 minutes, and worry not, we are recording the webinar, so feel free to go and to take a drink or put an ice in your drink, if it is hot also at your end of Europe where you are listening to this webinar. We will send you the recording in a couple of days. If you would like the presentation, feel free to drop an email to Linda, and we will also send you the presentation once when the webinar is done. We will have a Q&A part reserved, and that's for the end of the webinar. And yeah, I think that's basically it. If I need to say anything else, yeah, and keep an eye on the chat box, because we will share some content there, what I think it could be really valuable for you and yeah, for the future reading or any other insights what you would like to have after the webinar. Okay, Ernic, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Hrvoje, and hi again, everyone. This is Ernic. So we'll be talking about compliance, and you can see the agenda here. You know what we'll be talking about, like compliance in SaaS, and then talk about the most common or like most important regulations. Then we'll go through, you know, like financial security, data security, compliance issues or topics, and then we can talk about some best practices and how Younium or a proper subscription management solution can help. And then Milja will show us some examples of those in a customer story that we'll be having. So let's start with the topic. You know, what is SaaS compliance? Actually, I can say, like, you know, my wife being an auditor, I'm also, you know, forced to be compliant at home. So I think I know a bit about compliance all the time. But compliance in SaaS is about regulations and frameworks that, you know, SaaS companies are required to follow in order to be able to operate. And you set up your compliance processes based on those regulations and frameworks, you know, to comply with the laws and regulations. And these could include like how you handle your customer data, how you protect the data and your network, how and when you can send email communications to your prospects or customers, cybersecurity, how you do the revenue recognition, you know, statement contents. It's a whole comprehensive, you know, thing that helps all companies to, also operate in an ethical way, not only just, being in line with protecting the data or making sure the revenue recognition is correct, but also it helps you to, do, ethically in your work. And okay, so what is compliance in SaaS? Actually, it is a business driver that could also create trust and confidence in your customers. So if you, probably when you are going to sign with a customer, they may be doing a due diligence or like a know your customers kind of process to check if you are fit for, dealing with them. And then in those cases, compliance is one of the first things that they check. And it is a no joke thing, because if you are not compliant in certain areas, your reputation is in the line and you can get very high fines, from the governments. And, if you are a startup or an early scale up, not always you can handle that kind of damage, and that could be very dangerous for business as well. And growth and compliance comes together always, you need to consider them together. Just to give an example, let's consider you are going to expand into a new country, you'll do a geographical expansion. So you need to figure out the global accounting standards there, how the payments regulations work, tax laws, data regulations. So based on those, you need to have your policies and strategies for compliance, like how do I do accounting? How do I handle tax? How do I handle the security of my system? How do I handle the data security? So these are the things that you should really consider to create your policies and strategies. Another important thing is, if you are looking for funding or if your company is up for sale, the buyer is definitely going to check, your compliance situation as well. But, usually the finance teams are the leading force behind the compliance, but they're also the ones that are usually flooded with a lot of work in their, hands. So how could this be, how could a finance team could really do this in a good manner? I think it's a matter of planning properly. Just you need to act on it early. You need to have a strategy and a policy throughout the organization to run this. And also you need to automate as much as possible, because, automation is going to help you to make sure human error is minimized and you can deal with big volumes of, work, as we will see what kind of stuff you need to do for compliance. And once compliance framework and strategy is in place, you can focus on scaling and growth. And also, like I mentioned in the LinkedIn post, we will have some funny memes, hope to cheer you up, because it's not the funniest topic, So we keep talking about growth, but it's not just, operating within the laws and regulations, but, compliance is a lot more than that. Like when you are on a growth path on the tech side, you will have a lot more integrations with third parties, and all of them are potential breach points for your security. And you will have maybe like an extended portfolio with multiple products, add-ons. They all will bring new risk, because they all have to be compliant with the relevant, compliance requirements that they are in. So, and on the finance side, you will be, as you grow, maybe you will offer different kind of discount schemes. You will have a lot of different pricing agreements with different customers, not like any single B2B contract is similar to another one. You will have different contractual terms and conditions, different tax regulations and ratios, and then you have different invoicing requirements. So the revenue recognition is also going to be really difficult. So you need to be compliant when you grow. So those are really two important topics that come together. And let's have a look at the list of, the most important compliance items from our perspective. On the financial side, we have the ASC 606, IFRS, GAAP, and then on the security side, ISO 27001, SOC 2, and then PEPL and PCI DSS. And then on the data side, that's GDPR and alternatives of GDPR in different countries. So these are like the main things that you should be focusing on. So let's start with the ASC 606. So this is a revenue recognition standard. This is for all businesses, that enter into contracts with customers for any kind of goods and services. It's a 5-step process for revenue recognition, and you can think of this as a very similar way of, revenue recognition with IFRS 15. And let's check it step by step. In step 1, you need to identify the contract with the customer. It sounds really easy, right? How can you not do that? But It is not the case in SaaS because B2B SaaS contracts are really, complicated. You have different order dates, effective start dates, permanent payment terms, renewal notice, billing period. So you need to be able to identify contracts and manage these complex timelines properly. And imagine doing this, hopefully, when you grow for hundreds of contracts every month. So that's not going to be really easy to do manually. The step 2 is to identify performance obligations within the contract. So what does that mean? Obligations are actually the SaaS service in our case, and those obligations will keep changing through over time, with the upsells and downsells, because then, what you are providing as a service is going to change. You should be able to track all these changes properly and accurately. Otherwise, you will, have some discrepancies and incompliances. And a good hint here, actually a very critical thing, at this point, you should really categorize your, services. You should just create categories like, this is a recurring one, this is a one-off service, this is a usage one. This will save your life at step 4 moving forward. So what do we do on step 3? You need to define the transaction price. That means the amount to be paid in exchange of your, SaaS service. So, but the pricing is also another very complex item in, SaaS. You can have, I think almost all of the B2B SaaS companies have non-uniform prices. For example, there's the volume tier-based stuff. Like the more you use it, then the less you pay per unit. There's a discounts and it's complicated. So you need to also be really careful on this side. So you need to be able to identify the pricing accurately. And then the step 4 is, you need to allocate the transaction prices among performance obligations. And what do we mean by that? You need to, let's say you have a running contract and you need to be able to allocate the price per each obligation. Let's say you have a contract with a bunch of different line items in it, right? Like a recurring one-off. So you notice that, step 2 should kick in here. If you have done that properly, you would not have a problem here, because then you could easily identify, okay, this is recurring one, so it's billed annually, or this is a usage one, this is billed monthly, and so forth and so on, So here you need to make sure that you are already, having that categorized, pricing. And then the step 5 is the fun part, that you just recognize the revenue as, time moves on and then the obligations are satisfied. So it's just, you just need to decide the revenue recognition rules per each, revenue item based on the previous steps, and just move on. And of course, this sounds like a lot of things to do. I cannot imagine if you have hundreds of contracts running around to do this manually or try to have a look at contracts one by one. So this is a must of automation, because automation can bring a lot of values here.
Even when you said that something fall down from your desk. So this is how complicated it can be if you do it manually. Things can fall down. So don't do those steps manually. It looks like a really a lot of things to tackle. If you do it manually, and then also the errors can happen in this areas. So basically, we saw 5 steps to take into account. I think that we also have a really good blog about this, what Linda will share with us, and where we basically merged and we reshowed what this compliance and financial compliance can do in this area, and what does it mean also for the subscription-based B2B companies. So feel free to click the link in the chat box. I don't know if you have anything else on your desk that can fall down if manual processes start into place, but let's hear.
We'll see. So we have a really good blog post about this if you're interested, and we can always talk about this in detail. Please feel free to reach us, and then we would be happy to talk about these topics. So the next one is the IFRS and GAAP, US GAAP. So what are these? I mean, probably you all know this much better than me, but it is these are set of accounting rules, standards, and procedures to create clear, consistent, and comparable financial statements. So when you compare 2 different companies, that there's an agreed way of creating the financial statements to be able to understand what's going on. And then there is IFRS. It is mainly a European standard, but it has complete profiles for 166 jurisdictions as of 2021, and it is required in 140 jurisdictions. This is more of a principles-based set of standards. So it has some more, possibilities of putting your own kind of judgment or comments based on those principles to prepare or arrange your financial statements. Then there is the US GAAP. This is mainly used in the US, and this is more of a rules-based set of standards where you really strictly step by step follow the rules per each thing that you are going to be doing. But if you consider both of them, they are different, but at least on the revenue recognition, they are getting more and more similar through the ASC 606 IFRS 15. So, depending on where you are reporting or your preference, you just, have to go with what is required on your end. And then we will be talking about the security compliance. Here we have actually two different important ones. One of them is the ISO 27001. This is an international standard from ISO, and this, explains or puts how to manage information security to a framework that, identifies, analyzes, and mitigates all kinds of security risks. As they themselves say, this allows the organizations to manage security assets, such as financial information, any kind of intellectual property, employee details, or information that is entrusted to you by third parties. And this is like a really extensive kind of framework and certification. And then we have another one that is called SOC 2. Actually, this one is from the American Institute of CPAs. It is not a certification, but this is more like a suite of reports produced during an audit. So, it is intended to use by service organizations, or, you can also say this as a SaaS organizations. Like I said, it's not a certification. An auditor, issues a formal report and an independent opinion that confirming whether or not you meet the criteria. And this report is also considered very important by customers, certain customers, because it also shows what kind of checks and processes you have in place and how they were tested and at what steps what happened based on the auditor report. So if we compare the two, what is the difference or what is the similarities between the two? They are actually overlapping and complementary. One is like ISO 27001 is a certification. The SOC 2 is an attestation, which means like an independent witness checking your system and then providing a report about it. SOC 2 is a lot more common in the US. So depending on where you are or where your customers are, you would be, considering which one to use. Like in US, people also or customers ask a lot more about SOC 2. So you may consider that if you are, dealing in US. So it depends on, more about the requirements of your customers. But also it very much depends on your strategy and policies about compliance, like what you really want to achieve. And then another one is about the payments. There is PCI DSS and PEPL. If you know, PCI DSS, you may not know it because this is not like pure B2B. This is for like companies that handles card payments. We have some like a bunch of customers that require this. So if you are part of like a payment process where you accept, transfer, or store card information, you have to be, compliant with PCI DSS to be able to deal with this. And if not, probably banks will also not work with your, system. And then there's PEPL. This is Pan-European Public Procurement Online. This is like set of specifications for e-procurement or e-invoices. There are like almost 600,000 companies in PEPL network within and outside of the European Union. So this is sort of like an federated network that, you just send your e-invoices and make sure, that reaches to the other end, to the ERP of the company that you are sending the invoice to. And then we can talk about the data security and compliance. This is mainly, about GDPR, that I think everybody knows about GDPR by now. It is the General Data Protection Regulation of European Union. It regulates the protection of personal data for all European Union. And it addresses the transfer of personal data outside of European Union or European Economical Area as well. Like probably you are also considering that, like when you want to buy a SaaS service for your own company, you have to check that whether like, the data is stored in Europe or somewhere else. Like, that is something that you need to consider. And then there is BDSG for Germany. This is something like, different countries have within Europe additional requirements on top of the GDPR. For example, BDSG is one of them. What is the difference? BDSG is a bit more stricter in terms of the fines. Like if certain violations could even are even considered criminal offenses, and it could be the case that you end up in jail for that, or you may pay really high, fines. And on top of that, you are also, you can have like, you need to be working maybe with GDPR UK. That is actually the same GDPR as in Europe, but the difference is, it was rewritten for Europe, for UK instead of EU, because, they are out of EU now. And also, another critical difference is the regulations of GDPR UK also covers personal data for national security issues as well, which is contrary to the GDPR in European Union. And then there is CCPA, for example, another one, which is California Consumer Privacy Act, again similar to GDPR, but the difference is if a company has a problem, then they have 1 month of period where they can fix the damage they have caused before any legal action is taken. And there is like a very, I think I could say the fines that the companies pay are comparing to GDPR a lot less here.
I have a couple of questions. This is a really interesting
Sure.
topic. We are getting quite often a question here at Younium, and you mentioned that like it's very important when you buy a SaaS solution where they store the data. So just to touch upon, like, where does Younium store the data when we are talking about it? This is really common question what we are getting, for example, especially in the area of subscription management and finance. So very important topic.
Our system is hosted on Azure network on Microsoft, and that is in Netherlands. So we are using like one of the main, data centers of Europe in Netherlands, and all the data is stored within Europe. And, we are fully compliant with GDPR in that sense.
And from the marketing perspective, can you explain us the GDPR compliance in terms of outbound and marketing email, how this goes?
That's also that's also a common worry, because GDPR is about protecting the privacy and personal data of people, and then how come we can still do prospecting or send marketing or outbound emails? There is a distinction there. GDPR has a rule that if you are like in terms of B2B email communication, if there is legitimate interest, you can send marketing emails. That means, like, let's say we are selling a subscription management solution. So if we find a company that could make sense, out of a subscription management solution, we are allowed to send them an email. But each email must have an option to, for the receiving end to opt out of that email. As long as there is legitimate interest and there's an option to opt out, it is legal to send marketing and outbound emails.
Great. Thank you so much. And especially this California Consumer Privacy Act, it's very related to our team in US, what are dealing with this and are really experts on this matter as well there. Cool. Interesting.
And so this, summarizes the compliance items, and, one of them, we are always more than happy to go, dive deep into details, and we can, help you out. So let's have a look at, best practices for compliance, like how to approach this. First, I mean, like as we all know how to, like start this kind of things, you need to implement and enforce policies and processes throughout the organization. You need to make sure, this is something understood, and you have like policies or processes, that makes sure you are checking your compliancy. A good practice could be to assign a CCO, Chief Compliance Officer, and that person could be in charge of leading the compliance problem, like handle regulatory compliance issues or anything, like just to lead the compliance issue and bring people together and fix problems, or, steer this. And then you need to monitor this periodically by internal and external audits and risk assessments to make sure, because, things change and things evolve. You need to just test yourself and see where your weak points are, what could be improved, what is going good. You need to have an understanding and assessment of your situation. And then, of course, automate as much as possible, especially the resource-intensive processes. And, you should at least automate your revenue recognition, the 5-step thingy, or even better, you should, automate the whole quote to cash cycle. Why? Because these things are very resource intensive, and there are a lot of steps. And if humans are involved, we all are, prone to mistakes and errors. So human errors here could cause a lot of problems when you just go out of compliance.
Yeah. Could I just interrupt you? And I think this is a
sure.
good time in the webinar, because we got a really interesting question, but we can connect to this. And especially as you mentioned, like the manual processes, and you would like to automate. And then we saw the 5 steps, what you showed us. It looks really advanced. And the question is kind of related to this, and especially to the revenue recognition. The audience or they ask, like, seems like your service is targeting for advanced B2B. Attendee asked, we have 100 B2B customers at the moment. And ARPA is approximately 700 euros per month. Are we a fit in that way with Younium? And maybe you can also tell a bit more in this area of the revenue recognition, especially and the manual processes here, how they need to deal with it.
If your ARPA is around 700 euros a month and if you have 100 contracts running, I think that sounds like a really good fit for Younium. Younium can help you, or I would say, you would definitely do better with a subscription management solution. Just to, say this, like we mentioned, there are upsells and downsells. If you have 100 contracts running around, and imagine in the middle of the month, you just keep getting requests of, for example, upgrades, like your customer is saying, hey, I need to use more of X this month. Can you just upgrade me to the next plan? And how many people are going to follow up these and make sure, they are built correctly? If you do such a thing manually, at some point, we have, talked to prospects, or some of them are our customers now. They have told us, at some point, we are not able to catch up with these, because you have to check all those steps. You have to make sure it is compliantly calculated, but you also, it takes, a person to fix or control this. It comes to a point like we need to spend more than a month to be able to catch up with those, upsells and downsells. So at some point you start losing them, you start missing them. So you are billing your customers less than what they, are supposed to be billed, or some customers still billed more than what they are, supposed to be paying to you. So these also creates frustration to their customers, but also revenue leakage on their end, because they are not able to get all the revenue that they are supposed to get. So the automation with the right compliance could save a lot of time there, I could say.
Great, thank you. Really, really interesting.
You're welcome. And then also, just to quickly wrap up what, I have talked, how can Younium help? If you go back to the growth and compliance example, you had to expand into new markets like tax, data privacy, a lot of things to consider. And your portfolio grows, and you have a lot of different pricing per product, different customer deals, because B2B, every deal is totally different. You need to maybe implement new payment points, and maybe it's time that you need to get independent audit. So you need to analyze all these regulations, and you need to stay compliant for all these topics, and it's not just, okay, I did it once and I'm free. Regulations keep changing and evolving. And also your processes, your pricing models, you will also keep changing and evolving. So you need to make sure, this is like an ongoing topic, and you have to check everything regularly. But do you have the time to do that? That's a bit tricky. So what could Younium provide you, or any other proper subscription management solution? It could help you automate billing, invoicing, and revenue recognition. Actually, the whole quote to cash automation within the required compliance would just save you a lot of time, and you can focus on the growth instead of revalidating or reconfiguring your billing, revenue recognition systems, or pricing processes, etc. And then you are, in a peace of mind, because Younium ensures that the relevant compliance requirements are always, there for you based on what, we do from code to cash automation. And then also it provides a full audit trail for all the contracts that you have, which means like happy auditors and less effort for, auditing. So you will have, happy auditors, and then you will have an ASC 606 compliant through the whole, code to cash process. So that was mainly what I wanted to summarize to you guys. I hope it was useful. And if any questions for Hervoye, stage is yours.
Yeah, thank you so much, Ernest. We will keep a couple of questions. We got them for the end of the webinar, because I think it will be kind of nice to bridge now back to Milja, who will show us an example and a practical reference there of the steps what you mentioned. And thank you so much. I learned quite a lot each time when I have a session with you on these topics. New questions arise with me as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Happy to hear that. Thanks.
And memes are really nice. Super funny. Okay, Milja, the stage is yours. Let's see the practical example and a couple of data points what we have from Younium here related to this matter.
Yes, thank you. Yes, thank you. So thank you, Hervoye. Thank you, Orange. I just heard an echo.
Milja and Ernest are in the same office in Amsterdam.
Yes, I'm so sorry.
Yeah, table across each other, so probably the echo happens.
Yes, I wanted to be sure that everything was fine before I start. So I'm going to speak about a customer, and this customer will be nameless, sorry, but it's because of confidentiality. So this customer was a scalable company, and we saw that actually all their pain points were related to compliance. So our main goal was to solve 4 pain points. First one was the problems maintaining contract start date versus product start date. The second one was actually that the MRR kept changing throughout the year due to the length of days in certain months. Third one was that some customer demanded support for PayPal format of e-invoicing. And the last one, they have a legal entity in the US, but they had a lot of troubles to keep track with all the sales taxes. So in this case, we're going to zoom how we did help them. So let's start with their first pain point, which was actually that sometimes their contract start date was not the same as when the product was start to be charged. So here we're going to speak about 2 cases of our nameless customer. Case A. So in this case, our customer did give 1 month free of charge to their clients, but they didn't have the 2 to manage. So what they did was that the client started 1st of August, but they pushed the contract 1 month later. So their customer already started to do their onboarding on 1st of August. Our customer was handling their data, but the contract didn't even start, so it's not legal. So how Younium did help them was that Younium can separate the charge date of the product from the contract start date. So with Younium now, as you can see on the screenshot, the contract started 1st of August, but they could push the charge of the product date 1 month later. As you see on the right side, effective start 1st of September. So now the company was happy because they could legally handle the data of their customer, and the customer had 1 month free of charge. Now let's speak about case B. So this one is more complex because in case B, a lot of their customers, a lot of their clients wanted to pay the product once they finished onboarding. But how can you guess how much time the onboarding will take? How can you guess a go live date for your product? So what happened in this case is that our customer started to implement their clients without agreement on the start date. So if any friction happened during the onboarding, then they could lose their clients or lose a lot of efforts. But with Younium, what they did is that they could put a milestone. Here, the milestone, as you see on the right in the screenshot, once the implementation is done. So what does it mean? The finance team or the customer success team of the company could put in Younium once the client's onboarding is done. They say, okay, they finish their onboarding. And what will Younium do? Younium will prorate it, calculate all the remaining charge until the subscription end date. So in order to not have any revenue loss. So our client was happy.
And also what we saw in the previous slides, Milia, is that actually you took a couple of screenshots from the Younium interface. So basically, this is also how the interface looks when we look at it from the system perspective. Really nice, really, really.
It's even more fancier than that, just to say to all of you. It's just more parts. So second pain point of our customer, it's MRR fluctuation. So here, I just wanted to say the screenshot is fake. We did invent some numbers because it's we just needed an example. So here, take this example. Our customer had a client who paid their product 1,200 euros per year, which means 100 euros per month revenue. But due to the revenue recognition limitation, the company finance system, they calculated how. They did divide the annual revenue by 365 days, and then reallocated this revenue, which was on a daily basis, back to months, which caused a fluctuation in the MRR throughout the year because of the length of days in certain months. What do I mean? If you see this example, this screenshot, we know that January has 31 days, and here 102 euros. And February, depending on the years, it's 28 or 29 days. But here, so we see 92 euros. So instead of seeing 100 euros per month, it's totally depending the length of the month about the days. So this caused anomalies in the company, and which caused other anomalies which were difficult to find. And it also caused discussion between management team and investors thinking the company was not stable. But according to the ASC 606 about the revenue recognition standard, and Orange did talk about it earlier, Younium can actually recognize real monthly recurring revenue over time in order to give you a real picture, a realistic picture of how your business, your SaaS business, is growing, which made our client happy. So now speak about the third pain point, which was that some customers demanded the PEPAL format of e-invoicing. So some of you already know the PEPAL is a European standard and will soon be mandatory for all B2B e-invoicing. It's also the PEPAL standard allows to send and receive the invoices in a similar way. And it was more a wanted feature, and it's starting to become a must-have feature. So in this example, our customer didn't have the PEPAL standards and was actually sending their products to their big client, which was actually the government. But one day the government said, we want to receive our e-invoices in a PEPAL standard, which the company didn't have, and they didn't want to lose their revenue with them. But Younium has a big model, like a big account receivable model, and is rich in this functionality. So it's also, if you can see in the screenshot, sorry, it's also integrates with Visma auto invoicing and the Apex so that the customer can send all their e-invoicing with the latest updates. So here, the company, our nameless company, the client, I mean, with Younium could send to the government the PEPAL standard e-invoicing format, and they didn't lose revenue. They're now happy, and their demanding client is still here. So just to give you more example about Younium, there's two options. The customer can send their invoices to their system, finance system, or ERP. And then Younium will just interact with their finance system or ERP and say which product to build, to which client, with which agreements. Or second option, you can, as a customer, directly send invoices through Younium and also handle your account receivable process through Younium. Now let's speak about the last pain points. The US. Of course, the US is an attractive market, and this section will be interesting only for the people who want to establish in the US or are already established there. So a lot of us know that there is a lot of sales taxes depending the states. Everything is different, rule is different, jurisdictions are different. You will meet there for sure what's called registration threshold. So here, if you can see as you can see on the picture, the green are the states where digital goods are taxable. Blue are the states where digital goods are not taxable, and gray are the states with no sales taxes. But a company, yes, they go there and they see that there are more than 14,000 tax jurisdictions in the US. Yes, 14,000, which is a lot. So a lot of our current customers, not only the one in this case, were having trouble to keep track. They didn't know which sales tax to apply when sending their invoice. So with Younium, Younium is connected to Taxjar, and Taxjar knows all the sales taxes in each state of the US. So Younium, when the customer is sending an invoice, Younium already know which sales tax to apply, which our clients really happy because less stress, winning so much time. And of course, if you just saw, Linda did post a blog about tax jurisdictions in the US. So if you want to know about it, you can just go to the chat. We have an amazing blog. And I think I said everything. So Hervoye, I give you Bo back. Thank you for listening to me.
Thank you so much, Milia. Really, really interesting to see the example and also the fancy slide on MRR. I think that was also the Younium interface there. So really, really interesting, and especially on the Taxjar topic, that's something what we are getting questioned quite a lot. How can companies work also with this very complex tax jurisdictions in US? And yeah, as you mentioned, Linda shared a blog in the chat for everyone to check it out. We have a really interesting topic there, what Cezanne wrote for us. With this, we came to the end of today's webinar. Thank you so much, Ernich and Milia, for a really, really insightful presentation and a lot of new insights, a lot of new data said, and also that we saw how a solution like subscription management can support the compliance and can support the growth. It was really interesting to see it. Before we go into the Q&A part of today's webinar, let me just introduce Younium and who we are. So Younium is a subscription management solution company. We are based in so we have 3 offices in Europe currently: Amsterdam, Stockholm, and Malmö, and we have also an office in US in Philadelphia. We are specialized in B2B advanced scenarios and B2B SaaS scenarios, and this is where we bring the most value. This is our niche, and this is an area where we, as we also can saw, where we can handle this complex scenarios and complex tasks what companies can deal with. If you have any questions, I think also Ernich mentioned it a couple of times, feel free to reach out to Milia or to Ernich on their LinkedIn, or even you can, I think that Linda shared now in the chat box a booking link with Ernich. Feel free to drop them a case. Feel free if you have any questions for them. I'm doing that quite often. I'm sending a Slack message, hey guys, can you help me out with this? And they will be more than happy to answer it. Okay, Q&A part. We have a couple of questions, and one is related to what you, Ernest, mentioned, quote-to-cash automation and compliance. Could you maybe elaborate a bit more on this this topic?
Yeah, sure. Like, if you consider quote to cash, what do we mean by that? First of all, it's like, you have you start interacting with a potential customer or a prospect, right? Then you talk, you explain your solution, you discuss how you can help them, whatever, like you come to a point that a quotation. That's the point, like you already put some like customer related information in some of your systems in like a more like dare to stay kind of manner. And how do you deal with that? Like, let's say, you are using a CRM system, right? And then you put some information there. Probably the CRM is compliant with the relevant regulations. It's like you buy it as a service. But then the information, you take it from there, you put like, if you don't have, after the quotation of the process, if you keep stuff in Excel files, if it's in like Jack's hardware, if it's a hard drive, if it's in Joe's laptop, if it travels around with USB sticks, this is all like, these are troubles, like these are not being compliant. So once, you engage with a potential customer from all the way, from the quotation till the end of the revenue recognition, like you make a deal, you sign, and then you start charging, like, and then you just recognize the revenue monthly, let's say, you need to keep your data in preferably in a single silo where it can synchronize to all your systems, from CRM to subscription management to ERP. But in every silo or in every step, you have to be compliant with the relevant, regulations. Like, let's say, if you are storing customer related data in your CRM or in your subscription management system, you need to consider to protect the personal information of the people as well. They're like email addresses, every kind of thing. Or like if you are recognizing the revenue in those steps, you need to be compliant with ASC 606. So the whole chain of a process from, like quotation to revenue recognition, you need to be in compliance with all the relevant regulations and laws. And that's what I mentioned by Younium. Like, let's say if Younium is talking to your CRM and then it talks to your ERP and then to your own SaaS system, it can keep the relevant, like subscription and customer and product data. And then it makes sure that, you are in compliant with the necessary regulations and requirements. So that's what I, think is a good way to make sure you don't have any trouble moving forward.
Great. There is one more question, and that's connected to what you mentioned on the security compliance. So which one would you recommend? Which one is better, and which one should companies get? So we have two you mentioned. So
yeah, ISO 27, that's the one, right? SOC 2
yes.
and ISO, you mean this kind of cybersecurity kind
yes.
of, yeah, I mean, ISO is really extended and it's a certification, it makes sure like the whole company functions with the, the security in mind to protect like everything, like from your emails, like personal information, intellectual property, customer data, contracts, etc. It is a certification, so it transforms your processes and the way you work. But SOC 2 is more like a, a test, like a, an auditor comes, with a checklist. Okay, this like checks your processes, tests them, tries to, see how they fail or succeed, what are the points that should be considered to be reevaluated, etc. So it's more like somebody independent comes, tries, like checks your system, tests it, and prepares a report with the details, like this was tested and this is the result, this was tested, this is the result, and in the end provides like an independent opinion whether you met the criteria or not. So they are not exactly the same, they are different. Like I said, attestation, which is witnessing, and the other is certification. I would say, you need to check the customer's preference in your system, like what your customers are considering important, and what your customers are considering important, plus your strategy. Like, if probably you don't have any plans to expand to US in the next 5 years, maybe I would say it's better to invest in ISO first and then go to SOC 2. But if you plan to invest in US or expand in US, like in a few months, I would definitely also consider SOC 2 as well. So it depends on like, where you are and what audience you have, I would say.
Great. Thank you. In the beginning of the webinar, Ernest, you told us that your wife is actually an auditor, no?
Yes.
I'm sure she's super proud of you. and
thanks.
send her the recording after the webinar
I will.
because we will have it really, really good.
Yeah.
She trained you really nice.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I must thank her because like she helped me a big deal in some of the, like ASC 606 stuff, etc. So yeah, thanks to her also to make this happen.
Thanks to Ernest's wife. Also thanks to Milia and to Linda and to everyone who joined us for today's webinar. As mentioned, we will send you the recording in a couple of days. If you would like this really good presentation, feel free to drop an email to Linda and also feel free to hook up with either Milia or Ernest on their LinkedIn profiles, send them an email if you have any other questions. Thank you, everyone. Next webinar for Younium will be in September. Enjoy your summer and I don't know, have a nice day.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a nice day.